Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fractional Executive Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Kauth. This podcast is for owners of small businesses of $500,000 to $10 million in annual revenue whose growth has plateaued. With us today, we're very fortunate to have Eric Kneller. Eric is known as the Prophet of Profit, and he's the founder and CEO of Maranatha Consulting. His Profit Mastery Blueprint helps owners of businesses with less than 100 employees slash taxes, double profits, and retire on their own terms, which I think is kind of the goal, right, of your business. So Eric has previously worked in multinational sourcing, supply chain, and marketing. And then he went on to help several startups earn their first several figures. So you have a lot of great experience that we can pull from today, Eric. And I just, again, want to thank you very much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks very much for having me. I'm excited about the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, great. I usually start the podcast out giving you some time to just tell us a little bit about yourself and about your business and kind of what brought you from kind of leaving that corporate, multinational, great experience stuff behind to where you are now.
Sure. Well, the funny thing was I didn't get into the corporate role on the traditional line either. So I entered as the dot-com bubble was swelling. I had gone back and was doing a bunch of computer applications and network administration work and entered into a data analyst group and quickly went to associate director within that multinational. They had me running in different projects in 10 countries. We sourced everything when it comes to sourcing supply chain. The technology part of it was fun because we got to source online bidding software and then actually go out and I did train the trainer and took about 150 procurement professionals around the world through how to format their business and get it up. And we called them express proposals, but they're reverse auctions. We basically like eBayed out millions of dollars of business to try to drive the bottom line faster. So, suppliers could argue and say they didn't really like it, but we compressed the time frame. You have to do everything ethically and make sure all the communication is good. But that's where the methodology comes in, where I can look at a project and where somebody's at and how many times they may have sourced it and say, okay, predictably, we can tell, if you will, we can prophesy what you're going to get out of this project because I've seen so many of them. And then I know what people mean when they top out at that glass ceiling or burnout in corporate. When you kind of look around and go, okay, I've gone through a couple changes here. We moved across midway through the country. They spun off the division that I was in, went through IPO, and I was like, okay, let me try to do something on my own, which was a real shock. so that the number one thing that I learned was you're going to pivot within like 7 to 14 days versus how's it looking next quarter, right? So that's that was the start to get into small business. I jumped completely into something different, which was water treatment for small companies, but consumers as well. I got really passionate about the health of our water. It was shocking, quite frankly. And if we see what's going on in the media today with what just happened in Ohio, with Erin Brockovich throwing her arms up and going, I've never seen anything like this. Yeah, that was the kind of stuff that shocked me into it. And then one of my manufacturers became somebody I partnered with, and I took on with another group of folks, their contract to distribute in the U.S. So that had us go all the way out to the West Coast. It's just my wife and I. So we don't have any kids. It gives us the flexibility. So we actually started that out. We went 3 years almost full time in an RV, setting up those relationships. And that was a different type of business, driving product from the top down through plumbing wholesalers, some of the big ones like Woolsey Industrial and those Ferguson's of the world. And kind of never would go back to, I couldn't see myself fitting back into the large corporate role. But then I tell everybody this, we were in San Diego. San Diego is beautiful when you're allowed outside. Otherwise, it's just like anywhere else in the world. So when they shut off the world and all of our family was up and down the East Coast, that's when we decided to come back. And it was another kind of reset. I think everybody should start another career right when they hit about 50, right?
Right. or, in the times of COVID or something like that, right? So, Eric, a lot of the listeners here have businesses and they're having some kind of challenge with their growth. And that just reminds me for those listening to please like, subscribe, and follow the podcast. When you do that, what that allows us to do is grow the show and have guests on here like Eric. As a result, you get some nuggets and can grow your businesses that way. So, Eric, specifically, as I was learning about what you do, of course, the first thing I saw was slash taxes and double profits, which in my mind is who wouldn't want to do that, right? So what are some ways that you've worked with businesses doing that?
Yeah, sure. So the first reason is, well, why? How is that possible? And the short answer to that is because your CPA and your accountant is doing exactly what you are paying them to do. And they're doing a fantastic job of it. But there's what I like to consider like the bus lane, if you will, of tax opportunity. So there's these incentives and opportunities. Now, the one that's hot and heavy right now will be for another few months to a year is employee retention credits. So everybody's heard about it, probably getting voicemail drops, emails, everything all about ERC because it's running hot and heavy. But it brought awareness to the fact that it's not the only one that's out there. And that's how we're able to work with businesses and on the front end. So if okay, I asked this question as my door opener for this year. Who do you know who's hiring or trying to hire? Likely, right? So between 10 and 60% of candidates coming through the door will actually qualify for work opportunity tax credits. And 9 out of 10 businesses in the small to medium size aren't even trying to screen for that because they don't have time or don't know how or whatever. But that's somewhere between $2,400 and $9,600 of a first year credit for that business. So that's a real easy example to look at and say everybody should be doing that. And then as we go through a business, I'm kind of, it's terrible from a marketing perspective that I say this, but I'm kind of vertical agnostic and product, if you will, agnostic when it comes to helping the business, because it's not until I can talk a little bit and find out to say, oh, what else is available? If somebody owns property and they're investing in it for upkeep and they're and I take a vertical like hospitality, hotels, auto dealers, long-term care facilities, funeral parlors, all those places that you can invest money and has to look nice to have the right name on the door. That opens up a huge opportunity for accelerating depreciation. And I should say that I'm not an accountant. I have to come alongside their accountant and get our people involved and then figure out what the opportunity is. But they could be sitting on $50,000 to a couple $100,000 in tax credits just from changing the way they're depreciating that investment. Those are like two main kind of quick examples there.
No, thank you. I mean, those obviously make sense. And as one incentive is out there in the media, or like you said, it's in your voicemail and in your email, there's other ones, that are out there as well. That's great. You also, in your Profit Mastery Blueprint, set up business owners for retirement on their terms. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. The business owner has an advantage that the W-2 employee doesn't when they're running a successful business and they've got some time and road ahead of them. And what do I mean by that? Well, you've got leverage with that business. Now, that leverage from the standpoint of taxes is going to end when they stop doing that business, whatever it is. So they're going to move into a place of philanthropy potentially, that kind of thing. But I can't see you writing that time off on your taxes. You lose that. But while they're operating the business, what they can do, we've actually got a provisional patent on a process where it shows them how to leverage the business, come alongside with a partner of record for lending, and actually create a massive retirement account up front so that what we can do is through premium financing, which an average person can do it too if they have enough income, but most aren't looking at it this way. It's the age-old, how do the wealthy become their own banks, et cetera. There's an insurance product involved. It's not a particular carrier or product. It's based on the individual. And what that lets us do is marry it up. And in general, you're looking at getting about 25x to every dollar they're going to put into a front-loaded account. And so what that does is give a large indexed account the ability to grow more now. Would you rather grow, at 7% a year on $10,000 or $5 million, right? So they're going to be indexing against that amount. And then since it's an indexed fund, it's got a floor under it. So what that lets us do is protect the downside. That way, Not saying don't do what you're doing with your assets under management or with your 401k, or if you're playing in any kind of space in crypto, like just make sure you can carve out a portion of it with the leverage of the business and generate this nice big account that sits over here. And here's the best part, I think. When you go to take that, it is time. There is not the same oversight rules. And the best part, it's not taxed, and it's already taxed. So if I say, is the tax rate going to go up or down in the next 12 to 15 years? What's the room say? We've got nowhere to go but up, right? So that's kind of the umbrella of the process. And it also works out to boost business value, or it could be used for a key man. There's all kinds of ways to go with it. The general question is, are you happy with your exit strategy, or what is it? And then we can fit the right process and steps to the right business.
Right. And I think, you bring up a good point with your last sentence there is, what is your exit strategy? I think one, we know most business owners don't plan that. And number two, the next strategy is, I'm going to sell this. And we know that most business owners aren't able to do that. So I think what you have, with those three things, slashing taxes, doubling profits, and setting them up for retirement on their terms, I mean, obviously that makes a ton of sense, for our listeners here. Eric, you in the beginning were talking about kind of your own leadership development, executive development as a founder. You were talking about how, to expect that pivot. Kind of go back to those stories and those thoughts about how you developed as a founder, as a leader going forward with your business as a business owner. What are some of those things that you learned along the way?
Sure. I guess I was in a great group when I was in corporate that made us focus on that development too. So we had to come up with a certain amount of credit and points to be able to do that. So I was already taking the Dale Carnegie courses and doing one of the best things I'll tell everybody to do from a development perspective is wherever you're at, find a Toastmasters and jump into Toastmasters. It has so much benefit. They have a communications path and a leadership path. And, it just brings that responsibility and be able to think on your feet and communicate. So that's a big part of my success from when I was in Toastmasters years ago. Every chance I want to get, I want to talk about what I'm doing or speak in front of audiences about what I love to talk about. So that's something else that everyone should look to do more of. That was one of my goals for this year, was get on at least 10, 12 podcasts by the middle of the year so that I can do this. So I was grateful to have this opportunity. And then go back and, I would say, reread the things that you've gone through in the past, or Audible, fantastic. I mean, people learn different ways, right? Or take in information different ways. Visual, audio, Audible. So jumping on Audible and listening to stuff I definitely do my at least 30-minute loop walk every day. Easy time to plug something into your ear and be benefited from it, right? So those are some of the things. And then now, I know we had talked about it a little bit, was, boy, the tech that is coming at us now, like I'm far from a technical, I was telling you when I was getting started, I was already outdated before I'd hit the field with different certifications, right? The way it's always been. But people might be surprised that the AI that we're looking at now has been out. A lot of this has been out for like 50, 70 years. What just changed? Your access to it. So now they've got this flood of easy, free, low-cost access to this technology. And business owners need to be looking at this from a couple of different angles, I think. You want to look at this from personal productivity. So that's where it comes into, how can I compress what I'm doing? And then you have an opportunity now to lower some costs, which is, again, another profit booster, because quite frankly, the people that are, if your business is content and creation and follow up for other businesses, boy, I think your business just got, some people would say threatened, but I think it just got awesomer because you can add a lot more clients and provide a lot better service, in my estimation. So there's some of those ideas there.
Yeah. And I think, from my own coaching clients and experiences using those productivity tools, I think some of us think it's going to take an excruciating long time to learn those tools. And even for myself, once I just make that decision, okay, I'm just going to learn this, I almost always find out the online training, the videos. I mean, really, how many things have we learned to do watching a YouTube video,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, that's how I learned PowerPoint, which I don't know, I probably shouldn't even use PowerPoint anymore, right? So that's great. And, really from a standpoint of this podcast and all the nuggets that Eric just threw at us, I asked the podcast guests on the Fractional Executive to come with one. I think Eric you just gave us like four. And so, if you are following us and subscribing and liking the podcast, again, that allows us to grow the show and allows us to have great guests on here like Eric, who just gave you a whole bunch of different things that you could do to improve your business today. So Eric, before we conclude, I want to give you some time to talk about the specific projects that you are working on and let our listeners know how to get a hold of you.
Thank you. That'd be awesome. Of course, find me on LinkedIn. That's where everybody connects. I've had a LinkedIn account for a long time, and don't mess around with that too much, because I've had some people try to help me with LinkedIn, if you will, and almost lost that account. So find me on LinkedIn. The Profit Mastery Blueprint, profitmasteryblueprint.com is going to have the main product. And what I've done is I've productized this into a simple training to give business owners access to those things we just talked about. What are the programs to slash taxes, double profits, and how do you retire right on your terms? It's all in that one package. So that's a great place to go pick that up. And then as far as projects, there's what I started to notice last September, October timeframe was between all of the blue ocean that was going away from ERC, there were several processors and companies that were stacking databases of ERC clients. So what I did was pivoted, and what ERC is something that our back office processes because it's just a flash in the pan. We do all these other tax credits. So it was an easy thing to say, yeah, we're doing this. But post ERC, 90% of those businesses still have money on the table that could be as big as the whole table. So I started to reach out to the folks that were processing ERC and give them an avenue to not only, they're monetizing the database, but they're helping those business owners. That's the bottom line. Let's help get millions back to Main Street and help these business owners make sure they capture as much as possible to reinvest. So that's been my big push. I have probably 2 to 3 conversations a week with the larger processors and setting up those specific pipelines and relationships. And I've got options for them. So if somebody's picking up and hearing about this on the podcast that are doing ERC, I've got options for you. You can actually process your own. I've got a SaaS option, so you can plug this into your business and you can screen for other tax opportunities for your clients. Or we've got a done for you model. So either way you want to do it, we can separate the pipeline. Then I always just do revenue share for referrals, because that's what's so important, is right down the middle. I mean, relationship is key. So if anybody brings me business, we just split everything right down the middle.
Great. Eric, again, thank you so much for joining us today on the Fractional Executive Podcast. I really appreciate all the nuggets you've thrown at the audience here to help them grow their businesses. I appreciate knowing the projects that you're working on. And again, really, if I don't have a guy who's known as the Prophet of Profit on this podcast, I'm obviously losing out. So Eric, again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. Look forward to talking more and helping out anybody any way I can.
Thank you. So again, just a reminder, please like, subscribe, and follow our podcast, because again, the more subscribers and the more followers we have, we can get great guests on the show like Eric, who can then help you grow your business. The Fractional Executive Podcast is hosted by me, Ryan Kauth. You can get a hold of me at ryankauth.coach. And the podcast is produced by the awesome team at influencer.tv of Adam Marino, Mark Livingston, and Chris Dries. All right, let me try this Built Bar thing here. Built Bars they taste like a candy bar. So if you go to built.com and apply the code Ryan TFE for the Fractional Executive, TFE, Ryan TFE, at checkout, you can get my friend's discount for 10% off. My favorite is called Cherry Barcia. It's a chocolate covered cherry protein bar, but there's also great flavors like grasshopper cookie, caramel apple, cookies and cream, raspberry, salted caramel. They just came out with animal cookie, which is, those iced animal crackers you used to eat as a kid? That's what it tastes like. And then if I would say coconut or coconut almond, you probably have a candy bar brand in mind that I'm not going to say, but it tastes just like that. So again, go to built.com and apply the code Ryan TFE for a friend's discount of 10% off.